When Julius Caesar's father died suddenly when Caesar was 16, it put him in charge of the family. Around 17, he had also been appointed the high priest of Jupiter, though was later stripped of this position when Sulla, Lucius Cornelius Sulla Felix, became dictator of Rome. Caesar then fled Rome, but ultimately got in the good graces of Sulla, though thanks to his mother's family, and then returned to join the military so as to skip town just in case Sulla changed his mind. When Sulla resigned as dictator in 79 BC and died the following year, Caesar resigned from the military and returned to Rome, where he made a name for himself as a legal advocate and great public speaker, despite his high-pitched voice. This brings us to 75 BC, when a 25-year-old Julius Caesar was sailing the Aegean Sea when he was kidnapped by pirates. The pirates who captured him then asked for a ransom of 20 talents of silver, which is about 620 kilograms of silver, or $400,000 of silver by today's silver prices. According to Plutarch, rather than send off his associates to gather the silver, Caesar instead berated the pirates and demanded that they ask for 50 talents of silver, 1,550 kilograms, as 20 talents was too small of a ransom for someone as notable as himself. In truth, Caesar at this point was just a private citizen, but he was from a very prominent and well-connected family. The pirates, of course, agreed, and Caesar sent off some of his associates to gather the silver, which took 38 days to accomplish. Now nearly alone with the pirates, only keeping 2 servants and one of his friends, rather than cower, he instead took the route of treating them as if they were his subordinates. He even reportedly went so far as to demand they not talk whenever he decided to take a nap or go to sleep for the night. He spent most of his time with them composing and reciting poetry, as well as writing speeches. He would then recite the works to the pirates. At other times, he joined in with playing various games with them and participating in their exercises, generally acting as if he wasn't a prisoner, but rather their leader. The pirates supposedly grew to respect and like him, and allowed him the freedom to more or less do as he pleased on the island and their ships. That said, while he was friendly with the pirates, he also didn't appreciate being held captive. As such, he swore to them that he'd hunt them down and have them crucified once the ransom was paid and he was released. True to his word, once he was free, he managed to quickly raise a small fleet, which he took back to the islands the pirates had held him at. Apparently, they hadn't taken his threat seriously because they were still around when he arrived. He thus captured them, took back his 50 talents of silver, along with all of their possessions. He next delivered the pirates to the authorities at the prison at Pergamon, and then traveled to meet the proconsul of Asia, Marcus Junius, to petition to have the pirates executed. The proconsul refused, wanting to sell the pirates as slaves and take the spoils for himself. Unhappy with this outcome, Caesar traveled back to Pergamon, where the pirates were being held, and ordered that they be crucified under his own authority, which was subsequently done, though as a slight act of mercy he did have their throats cut before they were crucified, which, while still ended up with them being dead, was at least a much less painful and drastically quicker way to die. Not long after this, he was called back to the military, where he started to make a name for himself, eventually culminating in his famous crossing of the Rubicon, changing the world forever. That said, funnily enough, given how much of world history after hinged on this one act, up until very recently, nobody actually knew where the Rubicon was that he had crossed, which now leads us into today's bonus fact. On January the 10th, 49 BC, Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon with a legion of his soldiers, which was against Roman law. Specifically, governors of Roman provinces, pro-magistrates, were not allowed to bring any part of their army within Italy itself, and if they tried, they automatically forfeited their right to rule, even in their own province. The only ones who were allowed to command soldiers in Italy were consuls or praetors. The act of leading his troops into Italy would have meant Caesar's execution and the execution of any soldier who followed him had he failed in his conquest. So, why did he do it? Caesar was ordered to return to Rome as his term as governor was up, and he was ordered to disband his army as well. The problem was that with some of his political enemies in prominent positions, Caesar was not too keen on returning to Rome without an army at his back or the immunity granted to magistrates. According to the historian Suetonius, Caesar wasn't at first sure whether he'd bring his soldiers with him or come quietly, in terms of which thing was more risky. But he ultimately made the decision his survival would be most likely if he marched into Rome with some soldiers at his back. This brings us to the fact that despite the Rubicon once signifying the boundary between Cisalpine Gaul and Italy proper, the exact location of this river was lost to history until quite recently. The river's location was initially lost primarily because it was a very small river of no major size or importance other than as a convenient border landmark. Thus, when Augustus merged the northern province of Cisalpine Gaul into Italy proper, it ceased to be a border, and which river it was exactly gradually faded from history. Thanks to occasional flooding of the region until around the 14th or 15th centuries, the course of the river also frequently changed, with very little of it thought to follow its original course, excepting the upper regions. In the 14th and 15th century, various mechanisms were put in place to prevent flooding and to regulate somewhat the paths of many rivers in that region to accommodate agricultural endeavors. The flooding and eventual regulation of the river's paths further made it difficult to decipher which river was actually the Rubicon and where exactly the historic crossing took place. Various rivers were proposed as candidates, but the correct theory wasn't proposed until 1933, namely what is now called the Fiumicino, with the crossing likely being somewhere around the present-day industrial town of Savignano sul Rubicone, which you might think would be a dead giveaway as to the location, but it should be noted here that before 1991, it was called Savignano di Romagna. So what happened in 1991? Scholars, using various historical texts, managed to triangulate the exact distance from Rome to the Rubicon at 199 miles, that's 320 kilometers. Following Roman roads of the day and other evidence, they then were able to deduce where exactly the original Rubicon had been and which river today was once the Rubicon. And do note that the river that's there today is about 1 mile away from where the Rubicon used to flow. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe when you're subscribing. Smash that notification bell so you actually find out when we put out a new video. That would be great. And as always, I'll see you next time.